For the final time, we're going to give our thoughts on the Major League Baseball All-Star Game in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I am your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work over at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, co-hosting, and a little bit of producing. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. And as always, questions and comments can be left to my Twitter page or on our YouTube page. I try my best to get to every single question that you guys may have, but I will always say the easiest way to reach me is either publicly on Twitter or through direct messaging on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Well, I'm officially back in Kansas City. I spent Monday and Tuesday in Arlington. I was in San Francisco over the weekend, caught a couple of Giants games, caught the Home Run Derby, caught the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. It was quite a stretch of 4 days. You could tell yesterday that I was very fatigued. You could see the bags under the eyes. Tomorrow, I think, will be the first normal day because I got in early on a flight today, had to go back into work. So that's why this episode's coming out a little bit later. Just had a lot of stuff to catch up on, get back to normal with. But now we should be good to go for the rest of the week. And we'll have a normal episode on Thursday. That one will likely come to you either in the morning or before the evening time, not this type of hour tomorrow. And then Friday will be a Mailbag Friday before the Royals go back and resume play in the second half against the Chicago White Sox. They'll begin a long homestand against Chicago, Arizona, and then the Chicago Cubs will come to town. I think it's a 9-game homestand in total, but I'd have to go back and double check that. But I did want to spend a little bit of time on just recapping the lasting thoughts of the All-Star Game. I was there still 24 hours ago of when I'm recording this podcast, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, a lot of high-stress moments of just dealing with chaos, I would say, for the most part. And that's not a knock on Globe Life Field or anybody that was working there. They were phenomenal in helping out the media. There was just a lot of people there. So being able to work and find the space and all of that, it could be a little bit difficult at times. But glad that, not having to deal with any connection issues back here. We're back to a normal routine doing these podcast episodes, and we are oh so close to seeing Royals baseball again. It was incredible, though, last night to see the Royals have such representation to kind of put this bow of what was a fantastic few days in Arlington, Texas, and Fort Worth, Texas for the Major League Baseball draft. And to see Cole Reagans go out there and Seth Lugo go out there, and they're both being caught by Salvador Perez, Bobby Witt Jr.'s in the field. We were complaining early on in the game of, well, why is Bruce Bochy not throwing Seth Lugo? Why is Bobby Witt Jr. not in, but Corey Seager is? What seems to be this format here? What seems to be this recipe for Bruce Bochy? Did he have a bad experience in Kansas City? I mean, he beat the Royals as a manager of the Giants back in 2014. So it can't be that bad. If the Royals had won in 2014, maybe there would be more of a reason and poking some fun there at Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez and Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans. But what I thought was really cool was that Bruce Bochy saved them for a little bit later on in the game. I think to have some really good arms and good players out there to close it out. And B, to get the Royals all out there at the same time. And I think more than anything, though Bobby Witt Jr. got one at bat and Salvi got one at bat, you got to see 3 Royals on the field at the same time for back-to-back innings, I might add. And that's showing the change that this organization has had in just 1 year. And speaking with other media members, seeing how they would talk about the Royals, react to those guys coming into the game, they were notable players. People know who Seth Lugo is. People now know who Cole Reagans is. They obviously know who Bobby Wood Jr. is. They, of course, know who Salvador Perez is. But it was this feel of, wow, this team does have some star power here. And these are guys that are coming in to the All-Star game in big moments. It was not a blowout. It was a close game. And two of the Royals pitchers, the only two Royals pitchers that went to the All-Star game, they were tasked in keeping things in an advantageous situation for the final 3 innings. Seth Lugo had to throw the Cole Reagans had to throw the 6th, and Seth Lugo threw the 7th. And though they battled around some damage or some traffic on the base path, they walked away with a scoreless frame. Didn't have any runs to their name. And yeah, Bobby Wood Jr. and Salvador Perez struck out, and they're only at bats, but they still got into the game and stayed out there defensively. Bobby Wood Jr. made an incredible play in the 5-6 hole that saved Seth Lugo's inning. And to me, that was the highlight of the Royals in the All-Star game, of Seth Lugo throwing a pitch to Salvador Perez, and the ball is rolled out to shortstop or really shallow left field. And Bobby Wood Jr. makes the play to get out of the jam. Like, only Royals were involved in the lead up to that play. And then Bobby Wood Jr. gets it on to Josh Naylor over at first. So you got the Cleveland Guardian connection there. But it was incredible to see. I think it was a very memorable moment and something that Royals fans had not experienced since 2015. I mean, you could say 2016 when Eric Hosmer and Salvador Perez were in the All-Star game again. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 16 or 17 when Haas won the All-Star game MVP. He had homered. Salvador Perez had homered in that game. It was at Petco Park, and I think off Johnny Cueto. I think both of them homered off of Johnny Cueto to the short porch out there in left field. But that was really the last time that I had felt like the All-Star game was really worth watching. And I watched it every single year. I'll continue to watch it no matter how many Royals players are in there. But yesterday was different. This past week was different. The Royals being able to add Jack Caglione on Sunday. Bobby Wood Jr. getting to the finals in the home run derby. All four Royals getting into the All-Star game. I didn't think that was going to be possible. I thought that Seth Lugo was going to get in, but Cole Reagans was not. But then we found out shortly before the game that the game plan was to get both of those guys into the game at some point in time. And you could just feel the pride, I think, that a lot of Royals fans had. At least I could tell through social media for some of the fans that were down there. There was a very great sense of pride in watching guys out there that have been so good in the first half, have been instrumental in this team being in a wild card hunt. And hopefully in the second half will be the ones that carry them the rest of the way to get back to October and playing playoff baseball. And for the last 9 years, I'm not going to say it's been torturous, because if you lived through the 2000s and watched bad Royals baseball before there was any flags flying out there above the Hall of Fame, you would call that torturous. There was no, end in sight of the misery. I think for Royals fans now, you hope to see the glimpse of what 2014 and 15 gave you. And little things like this, they actually end up being pretty big, because it puts the Royals back on the map. It makes other players, free agents, want to come here. And I'll even go back to Saturday when I was in San Francisco and the Royals make the Hunter Harvey deal. So they go from adding Hunter Harvey, they add Jack Caglione, Bobby Wood Jr. with the home run derby, and then the All-Star game. It was 4 consecutive days where it felt like you were a stranger to moves like this or things like this happening. And that is the case, because the Royals in many, many All-Star games didn't have that type of representation. They didn't have a superstar competing in the home run derby. They didn't get a top prospect, a top 3 draft prospect falling to them wherever they were selecting. They weren't buying and trading for relievers at the deadline, high-end relievers. It feels different. And that's what I think during this All-Star break, at least I hope, people are able to look at it and, appreciate what we've seen in the first half, right? Because in the first half, we've gotten competitive baseball. Frustrating at times when they haven't played well, but they're 7 games over 500 with 65 to go here. And those final 65 games will be the difference in them getting to October or watching other teams play in October. But nonetheless, it has been a fantastic first half of the season. It only got better over the All-Star week, and I was very, very thankful to be there and witness it all over those last few days there in Arlington. But that'll be the last we talk about the All-Star game, unless something crazy comes out about the All-Star game, because now we're going to be looking forward to Friday and the second half of the Major League Baseball season. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I really feel like Tommy Pham and the Royals are making more and more sense as a match. And I'm going to tell you why next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. I have a few sponsors I want to give a shout out to, starting with SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Also want to tell you about PrizePicks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, and you can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to helping your lineup hit or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, on PrizePicks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy. Well, there was a report that came out from Jon Heyman earlier today. I guess depending on when you're watching this, it's either earlier today or yesterday morning, about Tommy Pham and the teams that are interested. And it seems like it is a two-way race at this point between the Royals and the Phillies. There could always be secret teams or sleeper teams that come out in the lasting moments of the deadline. Right now, there's 13 days to go, or at least when I'm recording this, 13 days to go. Maybe when you're listening to this, there's 12 days to go before the trade deadline. And the fact that the Royals have expressed this much interest in Tommy Pham, that to me is leading on the fact that, well, maybe it just makes sense. Maybe this is a move that the Royals can and should make, because if they are going to add to their offense, it needs to be cheaper. It needs to be a rental, in my opinion, because you just gave up Caden Wallace and the 39th overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft for Hunter Harvey, a guy that, yes, has struggled of late, but that was the price for a reliever with 1 year of control. I understand there are fans out there that want Jazz Chisholm. The Royals would have to give up a significant amount of resources to get Jazz Chisholm, and I'm not sold Jazz Chisholm makes the Royals significantly better. I think I can live with the Hunter Harvey deal because I believe Hunter Harvey makes this bullpen significantly better, at least on paper. Can always change when you see the guy pitch in person. But for a bat, for an outfield bat, which is what the Royals have been looking for now for a few weeks and maybe going back a month, why would it not make sense to go after a guy that, A, has been hitting leadoff this year for the White Sox, B, is 34 years old, and he's a rental? So that's already going to drive down the price for the White Sox. The White Sox can't go to any organization and say, give me a top 5 for Tommy Pham. Maybe they can, and they can fleece somebody. If the Royals gave up a top 5 for Tommy Pham, I guess I could understand why, because the Royals don't have a system loaded with top 100 prospects. So the White Sox trading in division might ask for a little bit more. But to me, Tommy Pham feels like a prospect in the 10 to 20 range, and then you have a lottery ticket throw in. That to me feels like what it would take to get Tommy Pham. I understand there's this controversy around Tommy Pham of, is he a great clubhouse guy? He's, very heated. He can be very intense. He's also played in a lot of playoff teams, and he was just in the World Series. And I think there are, guys out there that view him as a good teammate. Maybe not Jock Pederson with getting slapped for a bad fantasy football deal they had a couple years back. But Tommy Pham is a guy that, as a baseball player, I think is what the Royals can afford and what the Royals need while MJ Melendez is on the injured list with an ankle sprain. Now, let me be clear. Because of the All-Star break and when the ankle sprain was retroactive to, MJ Melendez might miss like a week of baseball. So it's not a long-term injury. However, maybe an ankle sprain lingers a little bit more than you'd like to. And the Royals still don't have a solution for the leadoff spot. Now, Tommy Pham is not some 3-WAR player. He's not that great defensively, but offensively, I think he's what the Royals need at the top of the lineup. And I think what they can afford to go and get. Taylor Ward for the Angels has an extra year of control. Jazz Chisholm is young and has multiple years of control. Those are the two guys that I think would make sense, but also not make sense in terms of what they're going to cost. Jesse Winker's another guy, but the Royals just made a trade with Washington. I'm not sure they dipped their toe back into that, and I don't think the Nationals really would want that to happen because they just got the Royals' number 2 prospect for a reliever. I think Jesse Winker would cost more than what Hunter Harvey costed for the Royals. So, to me, I think it comes down to Tommy Pham. We had a podcast episode about this, and yeah, I had people in the comments that didn't like that I said Tommy Pham's a fit, but from a baseball standpoint, if the Royals are going to add, maybe they don't. Okay, maybe the fit, yeah, it makes sense. He's played for Paul Hoover and Matt Quatrero before. He's got history with some of the guys that are playing for the Royals, right? If I'm not mistaken, Tommy Pham was in San Diego either when Walker or Lugo was there. I could be wrong on that, so don't take my word for it. But at least I think he's had some run-ins with a few of the Royals players out there, maybe more so bullpen guys, because Tommy Pham's played for a lot of teams. And I think this year, for the White Sox in a bad lineup without much protection, he's played pretty well. His OPS plus is above league average for a leadoff hitter. Think about what the Royals are getting at the leadoff spot right now between Adam Frazier and Maikel Garcia. It ain't very good. And I think that somebody like Maikel Garcia can now benefit from hitting lower in the order if they go out there and acquire somebody like Tommy Pham. But I take this back to what we saw in the offseason from the Royals, what we saw with the Hunter Harvey deal. When there's smoke, there's usually a fire. And Seth Lugo had all that smoke in the offseason of the Royals are interested, the Royals are interested, the Royals are interested, and they got him. Hunter Harvey was not really the name being mentioned. There was just smoke of the Royals really want a reliever. And there were, guys like John Heyman, and then also, was it Dan O'Dowd that had said, maybe I'm wrong on that. There was one athletic reporter, I'm blanking on the name off the top of my head, that, last week had said, I'll be shocked, or most of baseball will be shocked if the Royals don't acquire an arm or two in the next few weeks. And lo and behold, later that week, the Royals got Hunter Harvey. So if we get more and more of this Tommy Pham and the Royals are kind of linked here and the Royals have interest, the longer that goes on, the more that makes sense. The more it sounds like the Royals are trying to strike a deal. The Royals have scouted Tommy Pham. For the last month, they've been interested. They're going to see Tommy Pham this weekend. They could technically work out a trade and just keep him there in Kansas City for the rest of the homestand. And I just think that unless the Phillies strike or a sleeper team comes in, it feels like the Royals could be one of those teams that's the front runners to land Tommy Pham. I get that's going to be controversial, but from a baseball standpoint, he's somebody that I think fits the the need at the leadoff spot. He's a corner outfield bat, and he doesn't need to play every single day, but he also can give the Royals an extra boost while MJ Melendez is going to be recovering from that ankle sprain. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about Hunter Harvey, why he struggled, and how the Royals should use him in the second half. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. When we come back, how should the Royals use Hunter Harvey? We're going to tell you next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Our last sponsor today is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And one last reminder that eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So when the Royals resume play on Friday, there is a good chance that if the Royals are in a one-run game or a two-run game late, we're going to see the Royals debut of Hunter Harvey. And for some fans out there, at least the ones that comment on some of my posts, or maybe they have a Mailbag Friday question, Hunter Harvey is seen as the closer for this team, right? Or at least for some fans of, hey, you go out there and acquire a guy that's got closer stuff. Well, he's got to be the closer, right? He's got to replace James McArthur. Now, I would say to that, let's pump the brakes a little bit. James McArthur has been much better over the last month and a half, and he also is, the team leader in saves. And I don't think, at least to this point, James McArthur is going to be bumped out of that role. Hunter Harvey, to me, is going to be the eighth inning guy. He is going to be what John Schreiber was doing for the entirety of the first half. That if you got to the seventh inning or you got to the eighth inning and you needed to get outs, it was John Schreiber. And then John Schreiber, let's all be honest, got overworked a little bit because the Royals bullpen wasn't very good. And when that happened, you couldn't really trust John Schreiber out there anymore. He was on fumes. He was struggling. He was getting hit around. And he couldn't get the swing and miss. The difference between Schreiber and Hunter Harvey, though they do have similarities in being worn out a bit, Hunter Harvey does have the swing and miss. He's got the high-powered fastball. He averages 97.8 with the four-seam that he throws. And the Royals believe, at least their scouting department, their analytical department, they believe he's in for a big second half. But I think it also comes down to how the Royals utilize him. And this also, puts a little bit of pressure on the rest of the bullpen. Hunter Harvey can have a very good second half for the Royals if the other members around him can have a good second half as well. They don't need to be the lights out guys that we all hope they would be. They don't need to be that. They just need to be the guys that can put it together in the sixth inning. Or if you are down 1-0, 2-0, just bridge the gap. Because Hunter Harvey's most important value, I think, to this team is going to come when the Royals are winning in the eighth inning or the ninth inning. Hunter Harvey shouldn't need to be used when the Royals are losing. And you may be listening to this and going, well, okay, that could also just limit the amount of times he's out there. What if you need him in the seventh inning when it's tied? I understand that. Like, I would use Hunter Harvey if it was a 2-2 game on Friday night in the seventh inning. I'd go to Hunter Harvey right there. Or maybe you try to go Schreiber, then Hunter Harvey. But Hunter Harvey was worn down a lot in Washington. And that's why I believe the numbers were not so good late into his final couple of outings with the Nationals. I think he was roughed up because he's on fumes. He was tired. He was gassed. Same thing we saw with John Schreiber. So with him now in Kansas City, this puts some of that added pressure on Angel Serpa. It puts some of that pressure on, Will Smith. It puts some pressure, again, on a John Schreiber. It puts pressure maybe in the future on Walter Pennington. There are going to be guys that have to do their job in spots where it's the sixth inning and the Royals lead by 2 and they're on the road and you need to get the ball to Harvey and MacArthur to close out the game. And if they can do that, it's less and less outings that you're just constantly giving to Hunter Harvey. The best version of himself is going to be the rested Hunter Harvey. And he's got this long week off because of the All-Star break. I think it was the perfect time to acquire a guy like him because he gets that week of rest. And then he can be used a little bit differently in the way the Nationals were kind of running him into the ground. In Kansas City, they can use him differently. They could look at a scenario in which, okay, it's 2-0. We're losing to the Diamondbacks 2-0. Don't need to use Hunter Harvey. Whereas maybe the Nationals go, yeah, we want to use Hunter Harvey in this spot because he's our setup guy. He's the one we want to go to. I think the Royals can preserve his arm a little bit, get him back to that level by not overworking him, by not overusing him. And that may also mean, okay, it's a huge game. Let's say you're playing Boston at home. And, you need those 2 innings. Like, you don't want to go to John Schreiber. You don't want to go to Serpa. You want your 2 best guys out there, but it's the 7th inning. Maybe MacArthur goes 7th and 8th right there, and then you go to Hunter Harvey in the 9th. I think there could be a bit of that hybrid role for him where he's used in the 7th, 8th, or the 9th inning. You don't really need to pigeonhole him into one specific role. And Matt Quatraro doesn't really do that in the first place. There's been times that James MacArthur has come into the game early. He is, for the majority of the year, been a closer. But I don't think he views him as a guy that if the Royals were in a big game and they needed their best reliever out there in the 7th, now that you have Hunter Harvey, I think you would go to James MacArthur rather than try to squeeze 2 innings out of Hunter Harvey. And to me, if you can limit him to that 1 inning workload every other day, or maybe he pitches once and you give him, 2 or 3 days off, depending on what the bullpen situation is like, you can get that great version of Hunter Harvey again. Because with 45 innings to his name already this year, I think you're starting to see that fatigue set in. But the Royals, I think, have already thought about this. I think they looked at Hunter Harvey when they acquired him and said, we want to make sure he gets rest. We don't want to run him into the ground in the same way we had to run John Schreiber into the ground because nobody else in this bullpen can get outs. So that goes back to that point, as I had mentioned, to kick off this segment. Angel Serpa and John Schreiber have to be the best version of themselves in these final 65 games. Chris Stratton does as well. Walter Pennington, whenever he comes back up, is going to have to do that because the better they are, the easier it's going to be on somebody like Hunter Harvey, the easier it's going to be on somebody like James MacArthur. So if they can utilize him in a way that's not overworking him, I think you're going to see that great version. I think you're going to see that fastball be more lively, the swing and miss be a little bit better. But if the Royals are having to use him 2 to 3 times in a series, then you're going to see in September a guy just be completely run down, where he's throwing, upwards of 70 to 80 innings on the season. You don't want that really from your setup guy, and especially a guy that struggled in the first half or late in the first half because he was so worn down. I think the Royals will use him differently, and I think it's going to benefit them long-term, not just this year, but next year because he has that extra year of control. Let's get into it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, we're going to have a little bit more of a preview of that White Sox series. And if there's any other names out there, along with Tommy Pham, that may make sense for the Royals to acquire. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.